Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today I'm going to rant about my top 3 dislikes about the new Lexus GX550 coming out soon. Now, disclaimer, this is just for fun. I love the GX, but today we're going to keep it real and talk about 3 things that I don't like about it. Let's jump right into it. The first thing is the missing third row on the Overtrail edition. In other words, the dedicated off-road edition, the top tier trim in their lineup has no third row. And I find this decision to be absolutely insane, considering the fact that the GX shares a special spot in the marketplace as being one of the only 3-row capable off-roaders. Now, some people say, well, the 4Runner, blah, 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 but the 4Runner is based on the GX. And if you go into the 4Runner models, the TRD Pro, which is, the 4Runner top tier version, also deletes the third row. So now Lexus has done it again with the GX550. They deleted the third row in the Overtrail edition of the upcoming GX550. I don't understand this decision. The only thing I can think of is that Lexus went to a bunch of overlanding expos, and the overlanders got in their head, and I know this was part of their R&D, but you have to ask yourself, and Lexus has to ask themselves this question: how many potential overlanders, GX550 Overtrail buyers, how many of those potential buyers are going to see that Overtrail edition with all its features if it had third row seats that folded flat and go, you know what, that's a deal breaker, I'm not spending $75,000 on that SUV because it has third rows that fold flat. That's a deal breaker. It's got a third, I'm calling somebody. It's 3 rows, no good. Nah, deal breaker. Let's go over to Mercedes now. How many people are going to do that? How many people are realistically going to say the third row is a deal breaker for a $75,000 Lexus GX550 Overtrail? Not very many, Lexus. Now let's come over here. People in my camp, we have families. We bought this vehicle because you can stuff 3 rows of kids in it and still have the fun of a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Maybe more fun. So let's go over to this camp. People who have families. How many people with families are going to see this Overtrail edition and go, oh, it doesn't have a third row? That's awesome. I got a family and it's only a 5-seater. We'll take it. It's $75,000 and no third row. You know the answer. It makes no sense, especially that this is not the old school Land Cruiser with those silly side seats that took up 40% of the space. They just folded up like on the interior. They were wacky. This current generation GX has seats that fall completely flat. You can fit all your junk, all your overlanding junk in it. And we have ours down. Don't get me wrong. It folds flat. We have junk in the third row. But we have the option to fold it up. And you can stuff kids, in-laws, whatever, back there when you need it. So on a $75,000 top-tier vehicle that has a history of being pragmatic and practical, to delete that is mind-blowing. Now let's get back to that pragmatic and practical part, because the GX550 or the GX is none other than the Land Cruiser Prado. And the core of that vehicle's philosophy is pragmatism. It's the take everybody anywhere you want on or off-road vehicle. That's the whole point of it. So now with the GX550, you can take almost everybody on and off-road. So again, it loses that heart and soul of the Prado by playing around with the trims. I know it happened. I don't really know, but I'm assuming that Lexus hung out at all these overlanding shows and expeditions and talked to people, and they said, we don't want that third row in there. We need more space for our overlanding junk. Well, sorry, Lexus. I said I was going to keep it real today. Those people at those shows are car show people. So, I get that they have their cars all dressed up and they look all overlandy and la la la, but what Lexus should have done was actually hang out on the trail. hang out in the dealerships and talk to people. And you'll see that the people buying the GX have families. They have a reason to get that third row. You'll find that when you actually go on the trails, not at the shows, not at the overlanding expos, but actually out here on the trails, you'll see a lot of families and you'll see a lot of use of that third row seat. Again, at least give the option. So the argument will be made, well, the third row is deleted so you can carry more stuff. Again, I make the argument, when the seats fall flat, you're missing what, 2 cubic feet of space? Furthermore, people who overland like to put junk all over their vehicles. You don't see a roof rack here because we don't overland. It's all in the back. But people who like to overland and dress up their vehicle, and this is no offense to those people, I'm just saying, Lexus, keep this in mind. They like to show off the fact that they overland and are rugged off-roadsy types. What that means is they're going to put a roof rack on the roof of the vehicle no matter what. So whether you could clear out all the seats except one, make it a one-seater, like a was it McLaren F1? Anyway, you can make it a one-seater, and they're still going to put a roof rack with a bunch of boxes and crap all over it to say, I'm the out-roadsy, touristy, or adventure-y type. So even in that realm of carrying stuff, market research honestly would have revealed that those people who want to, how should we say it politically, display to the world that they're off-roadsy and adventure overlandy types, they are going to get that roof rack, and they're going to want to display that they have so much stuff that they need to have an extra rack on top, and they're going to put stuff all in it. So I hope that makes sense. I think it does.
Now, this is no knock against overlanders at all. Overlanding is awesome. What I think is happening here in the defense of Lexus is that Lexus is stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one end, they know that overlanders like the GX. On the other end, they know the majority of buyers don't care about overlanding or off-roading at all. And in the middle, Toyota knows that this is a Land Cruiser Prado and it's a hardcore utilitarian 3-row off-road vehicle. But they know, at least the American marketing team knows, that once they bring the Prado over to America as a Prado, just like when the full-size Land Cruiser was sold in America, the first thing people say is, I'm not paying that much for a Toyota at all. Why would I pay that much for a Toyota? Yes, indeed, Americans are a pretentious bunch. They want a badge to show off what vehicle they have, and that's usually a luxury car badge. So ironically, that's why we have the GX and LX, because back when they were sold as the Prado and the 4th Gen V8 4Runner was essentially a Prado, and the full-size Land Cruiser was the full-size Land Cruiser, people said, I'm not paying that much for a Toyota. So they gave it a luxury brand and sold it as the GX and LX, and it did sell. But it's sold not as an off-roader, it's sold as a badge. So the American market loves to say, I have a Lexus, I have this luxury brand, and it's big. And that's the end of it. So bringing this into the GX550, Lexus again is stuck between two difficult spots. They know that they can't bring this thing over as just a utilitarian type of vehicle. It has to be a luxury vehicle, marketed to the masses, and it has to have a luxury badge on it, Lexus, in order to sell. But they don't want to alienate people who want to off-road, so they're giving it this overlanding package. So in Lexus's defense, it's a difficult spot, because what do? People say over and over, I wish they'd bring back the Land Cruiser, bring the Land Cruiser back, bring the Prado back, but they'll stick it in the American market as a Toyota, and people go, I'm not paying that much for a Toyota. Why would I pay $80,000 or $90,000 or $105,000 or $120,000 just for a Toyota, a peasant vehicle, right? So there are American market factors at play here that Lexus has to contend with, and admittedly, it's very difficult. So in total defense of Lexus, they're in a tricky spot, and I think they're trying to, again, please both worlds.
I'm going to say this to Lexus. How many overlanders are going to say, third row, no third row that folds flat, is, or a third row that does fold flat. So it has a third row and it folds flat. That's a deal breaker for me. I'm not buying it. Versus how many people with families are going to say it doesn't have a third row. That's definitely a deal breaker. It is for me, and it is for a lot of people. So where does that put the potential GX550 Overtrail buyer? Well, now with only 5 seats. So in other words, now that we have GX550 Overland 5 seats, where does that now stand in the mix? Now that you've made it a 5-seater Lexus, what we have now essentially is a competition with the Jeep Wrangler. Because now it's a 5-seater. You can't talk about family vehicle. I can't talk about 3-row. Now it's just an off-road, hardcore off-road vehicle, but only has 5 seats. That puts it head-to-head with the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Only thing is, this thing is going to cost more than the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. And I think when people are in the dealership or comparing or shopping online, they're going to say, 5-seater Lexus off-roader? You know, most people barely get what a GX is anyway. So even calling it an Overtrail, blah, 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 the average person is going to see a 5-seater Lexus that costs a ridiculous amount of money, and they don't understand why. No matter how big your tires are and all the features you rub in their face, they're not going to understand this next to this Jeep Wrangler 5-seater, this Rubicon 5-seater that everybody knows what a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon is. It's a 5-seater, and it has front and rear front lockers, rear lockers, 4-wheel drive, big tires. The top can go off, the windshield can come out, the doors can go off and get in whatever color you like. There's speakers in the roll bar, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows what that is. And there's a sway bar disconnect on it. So I think by making the GX550 in the Overland trim a very, very, very expensive 5-seater, they've limited their market to only competing with people who are after the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, which is ironic because we were in the market for an off-roader, and we said, wouldn't it be great if Jeep just made a 3-row Rubicon? So like they made the pickup truck Jeep, I forget, the Renegade, or I don't know what it's called, but I forget what it's called. The pickup truck Jeep Wrangler, and you could see that bed. You're like, they could fit a 3rd row back there, and you could seat 6 people. I said, wouldn't that be awesome if they made a 6-seater Rubicon? And I said, that's just a pipe dream. But that led us to the 4Runner, and then that led us to the GX to be the perfect fit, the answer to that question. Now there is no longer an answer to that 3-row, 6-seater off-road go-anywhere vehicle, which ironically, again, was the whole point of the spirit animal of this vehicle, the Land Cruiser Prado. So I think they de-Pradoed the Prado and the GX550. We can only hope that Lexus fixes this. Lexus, if you're listening, put the fold flat 3rd row back in the GX550 so the people who are actually going to buy it, that have a bunch of kids, can actually buy it. Right now, like I said, it is a deal breaker for us. We can't work with it because there's no 3rd row seat. So even though we want to buy it, what are you going to do? All right, let's move on to the second thing, and that is EKDSS. The GX550 now, according to the specs that Lexus has released, and they have their brochures online about what the trim levels are. EKDSS is only available on the Overtrail edition. Again, I don't know why. Remember when Lexus was a Lexus and there was no trims of Lexuses? Now there's like 12 or 13 or 15 trims for this GX550. You know, premium plus, luxury plus, blah, 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 plus. You know, it's all the silly trimming of everything. Back in the day, Lexus was fully loaded, and you got the LS or the, I don't know, I can't think of it. You get what I'm saying. There's 2 Lexuses. Forgive me. But there's 2 Lexuses, and they were fully loaded. You had the big boy Lexus with the 8-cylinder, and you had the little 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder one. And they're fully loaded. There was no options. You got a Lexus. You got everything. So here we are with the GX550, and you're like, yeah, I'm getting a GX550. Let's say I don't want that Overtrail trim, whatever, so I'll just get the regular. That'll have everything except the big tires, right? And the different body kit and colors, right? No, you don't get a main primary off-road feature, and that's EKDSS, the fabulous sway bar disconnect system. Lexus did this on the LX600 instead of bringing over the EKDSS from the Land Cruiser. from the Land Cruiser 300 and putting on the LX600, they omitted it. So again, Lexus is doing this with the GX550. So now, let's say, okay, I need those 3 rows. I'll just get a Lexus Premium Plus GX. I lose the tires, but it's no problem. I can just get those tires and put 33s on there. Everything else is the same, right? Of course not. They deleted EKDSS.
Now, if you don't understand why I'm whining on and on about EKDSS and why I'm so disappointed that Lexus decided to not put EKDSS on their regular trims and only put it on the Overtrail edition, it's because KDSS is one of those GX defining features. It is a class-leading sway bar disconnect. In other words, this segment of off-road SUVs, and even getting in the Jeep Wrangler territory, it is simply the best sway bar disconnect system that's out there. Furthermore, it's been on the Lexus GX series since way back with the Lexus GX470. So pre-GX460, all the way on the GX470, it came standard, all trims, with the class-leading amazing KDSS system. Same with the GX460. Now Lexus is omitting it and only putting it on their top-tier Overtrail without a 3rd row. So it didn't matter what GX trim you got. If you were in a GX, you knew you were getting this full articulation, which is major off-road. It's not a Mickey Mouse thing. It's not a marginal thing. With those sway bars disconnected, you get in that GX and you can feel those tires just undulating and hitting the road and articulating everywhere. It's a major, major feature.
This picking and choosing and picking apart of the core vehicle, the Land Cruiser Prado, is really disappointing in my opinion, because you're making it not a Prado. You're picking it apart, you're disintegrating what it actually is, and you're honestly losing the market for this vehicle. Because if Lexus isn't marketing to people who appreciate it for what it is, a Land Cruiser Prado, then they're marketing to people who have no clue what it is, and they just go, I just want a big SUV that looks pretty and has a lot of room. But it doesn't, because it's, the seats are missing and this, that, and the other. So at the end of the day, by picking apart what this is, it leaves a lot of room for competition against this GX550, because people are just going to say, well, why don't I get, this Mercedes 3-row SUV or this Chrysler or Ford 3-row SUV? It's bigger, it's taller, it's got bigger tires, it's got a bigger back seat, it's got bigger cargo area, blah, blah, blah. And so I think by taking all these features and cherry picking which ones go where, you're losing both your core GX fanatic and others, and you're losing the masses who have no clue what it is and just see it as a big SUV. You're losing both markets by not deciding what you want to be. Are you selling this as a Prado, or are you selling it as a generic, regular old SUV? You can't have it both ways. I think by playing that middle ground, trying to play it safe, it's going to backfire. Sales will tell. Which brings me to the third and final thing, and that is the Prado. As we said, cherry picking it apart. The Prado, or the Lexus GX and the new GX550, is bigger. So the Prado is becoming less and less like the Prado. Now again, this may not matter to many people, but hardcore off-roaders will appreciate that the Prado is a small Land Cruiser. So just like the small Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, and then the smaller Jeep Wrangler, even smaller, is advantageous off-road. The new Lexus GX550 has the same wheelbase as the new Land Cruiser 300 in the world market. So it has the same dimensions, give or take, as the Land Cruiser 300, but the wheelbase is exactly the same and the width is exactly the same. So we're losing this whole Prado, this tight SUV that can get you anywhere you want and navigate the trails and has these great wheelbases and approach and departure and breakover angles, blah, blah, blah. It's getting fatter is what I'm trying to babble here, and therefore the whole idea of the Prado is kind of drifting away. So if there's anything that we're to take away from these rants, and remember they're rants, this is just for fun, I love Lexus, I love the GX, we're just giving you food for thought here, if there's anything to take away here, it's just a wish. And that wish is, why can't Lexus just bring over the Prado as is and just sell it with all the crap? The whole point of why the Prado was invented. They take everybody anywhere on an off-road vehicle with all the stuff. Don't cherry pick the features. Let the customer decide what they want and what they don't want by simply buying a different model. You know, if you don't want a Prado, go buy something else instead of trimming it out to all these silly things. And if you think that's a crazy idea, you have to consider that in the world market, this doesn't happen. There's not all these silly trims. You just get a Prado, you know, or you just get a Land Cruiser. Yes, there's trims, but they're very marginal differences, you know. You know, the stereo might be different or something else. You know, there's not these night and day differences like deleted seats. So, keeping that in mind, how can we end this on a positive note? Let's just say, Lexus, if you're listening, it is my sincere hope, and I know the families and the children, think about the children that I see on the trail out here, would appreciate a 3-row SUV. The cubic feet saved by removing those butt pads from the fold-down seat so you can have a little bit of an indent in the 3rd row is not going to make or break anybody who wants to overland, but it will make or break a family, whether they like to overland or not. EKDSS. Every model, this old GX and the 470 had KDSS, so why in the world would you take it away on this new Lexus GX550? And the third and final takeaway is probably won't go anywhere, but I'll put it out there anyway, is that, you know, it's a shame that it's getting fatter because that does dig into the off-road ability, but I know what Lexus will say. Americans have a connection between an expensive car and a big car, and they have to balance those two worlds out, and that is fair. That's totally fair. Americans will be like, why am I paying $75,000 for a smaller vehicle? And the vehicle's not huge, so there is a correlation there. But I think you could balance it out by putting the 3rd row back in. So anyway, I won't go on and on. If you found this video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. Remember, it's just for fun. If you love the Lexus GX550, it's not trying to change your opinion. It's just food for thought, food for rant, and yeah, I'll probably still buy one anyway.
Nothing divided from the century of the cool cat. Deep down with the clean of the hot hat. Lift up face and then they knocking on my door. I've been feeling the boom. This is really after 4. The rest of what that core was really just bored. Yo, break out the sword and let's go cruising in your Ford. Watch out, yeah, sweet snow is the deal. As she shouted, it's the funky lesson 1 to the grill. I should have known that something wasn't right in walking. The biggity boom was just ticking and clocking. A night boy in plaid is passed from his dad. Another straight in the fight, man, but he wasn't from the right clan. Stop all the nonsense, the fences.